The sound of the judge's gavel hits the air with a sudden crack. The court falls into dead silence. The tension is palpable as the truth is finally laid bare before everyone present. A juror shifts uncomfortably in their seat, gripping the armrest as their fingers tense with nerves. In the witness box, a soft, trembling voice cracks as it speaks a truth that sends shockwaves through the room. The room holds its breath, every person aware that lives are about to be destroyed. A reporter's pen stops mid-stroke, frozen in disbelief. One coffee cup slips from the hands of a nervous spectator, dark liquid spilling across the floor. The defendant's face, pale and sweaty, betrays the storm of emotions building within them. Outside, the storm clouds grow darker, matching the mood inside. This trial is no longer just a legal matter. It has become a battle for survival. There is no turning back now. The protagonist, Jonathan Steele, sits at the defense table, hands clasped in front of him, his eyes locked on the floor. His once unshakable confidence now replaced with a palpable fear that hangs in the air. His mind races as the prosecutor's words echo in his ears, tearing apart the reputation he spent years building. Jonathan is a fallen icon, the public's beloved talk show host, now accused of a crime he never imagined. The weight of the situation presses down on him with crushing force, the silence in the room amplifying his every heartbeat. Outside, a storm begins to churn in the sky, thunder rumbling ominously. Inside, the storm has already arrived. The camera shifts to the jury box. Their faces are unreadable, yet their eyes constantly return to Jonathan, as if searching for a shred of the man they once admired. His lawyer, Rachel Green, notices his disquiet and leans in to whisper words of comfort, but Jonathan can barely hear her over the roaring in his ears. Rachel Green, the defense attorney, glances at Jonathan, her eyes filled with determination. She knows the stakes, knows how close they are to losing everything. She touches the stack of evidence in front of her, a reminder that there's still a chance to fight back. As she begins to prepare her opening statement, she sees Jonathan's hesitation. It's clear that the emotional toll is getting to him. She leans in, her voice steady but filled with urgency. "This isn't over," she says quietly. "We're not done yet." Jonathan looks up at her, his eyes meeting hers for the first time in what feels like forever. For a brief moment, something flickers in his eyes. Doubt, fear, but also a trace of hope. The storm outside intensifies, as if mirroring the chaos inside. The trial has just begun, and yet it already feels like it could be their last chance. As the prosecutor rises to deliver his next statement, the room grows tense. Victor Carlisle, the prosecutor, is a man of sharp words and sharper intentions. His reputation for ruthless tactics precedes him, and he thrives in the courtroom spotlight. He begins his cross-examination, each word designed to pierce through Jonathan's defenses. "Mr. Steele," he begins, his voice cold, "how do you explain the evidence found at the scene?" The weight of the question is immediate. Jonathan's eyes widen slightly, but his lips remain tightly pressed together. He knows the truth will not save him now. He can feel every eye on him, the jury's gaze heavy with judgment, the public's expectations suffocating. The storm rages outside as if nature itself is waiting for Jonathan to crack. His defense team watches with bated breath as the room holds its collective silence. Jonathan takes a slow, steady breath before standing up, his knees trembling slightly. It's time to face the truth. As he moves to take the stand, every step feels like a lifetime. The room watches as he approaches the witness box, the weight of their expectations on his shoulders. Jonathan sits down, his hands resting on the edge of the stand, his posture stiff. The jurors' eyes are locked on him, and for a moment, the room feels suffocatingly small. The tension builds with each passing second. Rachel watches from the table, her jaw set, knowing this moment could decide everything. Jonathan looks at the jury one by one, trying to steady his nerves, but the pressure of their stares feels unbearable. He opens his mouth to speak, but the words catch in his throat. This is it, the point of no return. The storm outside begins to lash against the courtroom windows, as if echoing the turmoil inside Jonathan's heart. The tension inside the courtroom feels unbearable. Jonathan Steele sits in his chair, his mind racing. He had always been the man in control, confident, charismatic, loved by millions. But now, everything he's worked for is teetering on the edge. His thoughts flash back to the beginning of his rise to fame, the late-night talk shows, the interviews, the adoring fans. But all of that feels so distant now. The prosecutor's voice rings in his ears, punctuating the weight of the accusation. "You're a fraud, Jonathan Steele." The words cut deep. He had spent years building an empire, and now it could all collapse in a matter of days. His defense lawyer, Rachel Green, notices his unease and leans in, trying to offer a sense of reassurance. "Remember why you're here. You have the truth on your side," she whispers. But Jonathan isn't sure anymore. Is the truth enough? Or is it already too late? Rachel takes a deep breath and scans the courtroom. The jury remains motionless, their faces blank, their eyes fixed on the trial. It's impossible to tell which way they lean. As her gaze shifts, she notices a familiar face in the audience. Lena Rivers, Jonathan's estranged wife. Lena's expression is unreadable, her posture stiff as she watches from the gallery. It's been years since their marriage ended, but seeing her again brings a rush of emotions. Rachel knows Lena's presence is no coincidence. She's here for a reason. Could she be a witness for the prosecution? Rachel doesn't have the answers yet, but the presence of Lena complicates things. The stakes just got higher. Rachel stands and moves to the podium, trying to ignore the nagging feeling that something is off. The courtroom grows quieter as she prepares to make her next move, but the unease in her chest won't dissipate. Rachel walks back to her seat, her mind racing. She tries to focus on the case at hand, but Lena's presence is a constant distraction. It doesn't help that the prosecutor, Victor Carlisle, has been relentless in his questioning. "Mr. Steele," he had said earlier, his voice cutting through the courtroom, "your public image has been carefully curated, hasn't it? Do you expect us to believe that your entire career was built on an honest foundation?" His words echo in Rachel's mind, and she can't help but wonder if the prosecutor is getting too close to the truth. Jonathan's public persona was always meticulously managed, but there were whispers about his personal life, whispers that could tear his image apart. As she sits next to Jonathan, she wonders, is he guilty or has he been framed? The storm clouds outside begin to thicken, mirroring the darkness closing in around them. As the trial continues, things take an unexpected turn. The witness called to the stand is none other than Lena Rivers. Jonathan's heart skips a beat. He hadn't expected her testimony to come so soon. The air feels thick with tension as Lena steps up to the witness stand. Her face is calm, but Jonathan knows her too well. There's a storm inside her, one that she's kept hidden for years. As she begins to speak, her voice is steady but carries an underlying bitterness. "Jonathan Steele," she says, "is not the man you think he is." Jonathan's pulse quickens. Her words are like daggers, each one aimed directly at him. The past is coming back to haunt him, and Lena's testimony may be the thing that breaks him. As she speaks, Jonathan's world begins to unravel even further. The courtroom falls silent after Lena's statement. The weight of her words lingers in the air. Jonathan stares at her, unable to form a coherent thought. His entire life, his entire career, has been a lie. How much of it was real? How much was carefully constructed to fit the image of a perfect celebrity? Victor Carlisle seizes the moment. He stands up, his voice cutting through the stillness. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," he says, "the truth is staring us all in the face. Jonathan Steele's empire was built on deceit. His marriage, his career, his life, it's all a facade." The words strike like a hammer, and Jonathan feels the full force of their impact. The storm outside rages louder now, as if nature itself is mirroring the chaos inside Jonathan's heart. His mind races, but all he can think of is one thing. Is it too late for him? The courtroom is thick with tension as Victor Carlisle continues his relentless cross-examination of Jonathan. "You've said over and over that you're an honest man," he taunts, "but the evidence says otherwise." Jonathan's grip tightens on the edge of the witness stand. The entire room seems to close in on him as each question feels like a nail in his coffin. His past, once so carefully constructed, now feels like a house of cards, ready to collapse at any moment. Jonathan wants to speak, to defend himself, but the weight of his secrets holds him back. The jury's eyes pierce through him, their silent judgment suffocating. His attorney, Rachel Green, watches from the defense table, her face tight with concern. She knows this is the breaking point. She's seen Jonathan at his best, but now, all she sees is a man on the edge, struggling to keep it together. Rachel shifts in her seat as Lena Rivers stands and makes her way to the witness stand. The tension in the courtroom rises immediately. Lena's presence always has an effect on Jonathan, and now, as she prepares to testify against him, Rachel can feel the weight of the past settling in. The room goes quiet as Lena begins her testimony. Her words are slow, calculated, and each one cuts deeper than the last. Jonathan was never the man he pretended to be, she says, her voice cold and emotionless. Jonathan can hardly look at her. The pain of their broken marriage and her betrayal is still fresh, even after all these years. Rachel watches as Jonathan's jaw tightens, his anger barely contained. This trial has become more personal than she ever anticipated, and Lena's presence only makes it worse. As the cross-examination continues, Rachel stands and approaches the witness stand, her confidence unwavering. "Lena, you're here today, but you weren't always so candid with your story," Rachel says, her voice calm but firm. "How can the jury trust your words when you've been hiding secrets of your own?" Lena's face falters for a moment, but she quickly regains her composure. Rachel presses on, asking the hard questions that challenge Lena's credibility. "Why are you suddenly speaking out now after all these years?" she demands. The room holds its breath as Lena tries to respond, but Rachel isn't done yet. "If you're truly looking for justice, why didn't you come forward sooner?" The tension in the room rises as Rachel's words begin to plant seeds of doubt. Is Lena telling the truth, or is she using Jonathan as a scapegoat to cover up her own lies? Jonathan watches the trial unfold, his mind spinning. He can't help but think about the past, his career, his family, his life before all of this began. The betrayal he feels from Lena is crushing, and he wonders if he'll ever be able to forgive her for what she's doing to him now. But even more, he wonders if he deserves forgiveness. The prosecutor's relentless attack on his character has eroded his self-confidence. The defense's strategy is beginning to feel like a distant memory. Jonathan can feel the walls closing in on him, and the storm outside grows louder, its booming thunder mimicking the chaos inside his mind. Rachel looks over at him, her expression softened, but Jonathan knows she's losing faith. The courtroom is starting to believe Lena's version of the story, and Jonathan feels like he's losing control of everything. The trial takes a surprising turn when a new piece of evidence is introduced, an audio recording of a conversation between Jonathan and Lena, one that no one knew existed. The recording is played for the jury, and Jonathan's heart sinks as he hears his own voice. The conversation paints a picture of a man who, in the heat of the moment, says things that no one could ever expect from a celebrity. The room goes silent as the recording plays, each word a blow to Jonathan's defense. His eyes are wide with disbelief. How could this happen? How did this evidence come to light? Rachel's face hardens as she listens to the recording, but she quickly regains her composure. She knows this could be the turning point of the trial, and she needs to act fast to salvage what's left. The room falls silent as Rachel Green calls her next witness. The air is thick with anticipation. The door opens, and the unexpected figure steps into the courtroom. Martha Shaw, the prosecution's star witness, a former close friend of Jonathan's. The eyes of the entire courtroom focus on her as she walks confidently to the witness stand. Her reputation precedes her. She's known for having personal knowledge of Jonathan's darkest secrets. Her words could make or break this case. As she takes the oath, Rachel watches intently. This could be the final blow. Martha opens her mouth to speak, and the first words she says send chills through the courtroom. Jonathan Steele was hiding more than just his personal life from the public. she says, looking directly at Jonathan. He was hiding his involvement in something far worse. The room holds its breath. Jonathan's world is about to shatter once more. The revelation from Martha Shaw hangs in the air like a cloud of poison. Jonathan's heart races as he tries to process what she's just said. The truth, buried for so long, is now laid bare before everyone in the room. Rachel quickly stands to object, her voice sharp. "Your Honor, this is irrelevant and prejudicial. We're here to discuss the facts, not rumors." But the judge merely nods for Martha to continue. The room goes still, every eye fixed on her. "Jonathan Steele," Martha continues, "was involved in a series of meetings with a group of individuals whose business practices were less than legal." Jonathan's pulse quickens. He's heard rumors, but hearing Martha speak them so plainly, so definitively, sends a wave of panic through him. His entire career, his life's work, could be destroyed by the secrets he thought he could bury forever. As Martha's testimony continues, the prosecutor leans in, his voice dripping with triumph. "Isn't it true, Mr. Steele," he says, "that you personally arranged meetings with individuals involved in a large-scale money laundering scheme?" Jonathan can feel the blood drain from his face. His mind races, scrambling to find a way to disprove the allegations. But nothing in the world can take back Martha's words. Rachel stands up, determined to stop the prosecutor's line of questioning, but her voice falters as the prosecutor's words cut deep. The jury is watching closely, their faces unreadable. Jonathan's entire body tenses as he realizes the severity of the charges. The storm outside rages with thunder, as the storm inside the courtroom mirrors the turbulence Jonathan feels. His reputation, his future, and his freedom are all hanging by a thread. Jonathan's heart races as the courtroom erupts into whispers. The prosecutor has planted a seed of doubt, and now it's growing in the minds of the jury. Martha Shaw's words reverberate in his mind, and he struggles to maintain his composure. Rachel sits beside him, her voice barely a whisper. "Don't let them see you break," she urges, but Jonathan can barely focus. The walls are closing in. The truth is slowly unraveling, and there's nothing he can do to stop it. The storm outside continues to grow louder, the wind howling through the windows. Jonathan knows he needs to do something, say something, but he can't bring himself to speak. Every word feels like it would make things worse. The jury watches him closely, their eyes sharp with suspicion. The judge calls for a brief recess, but Jonathan doesn't move. His mind is racing, but his body feels numb. As the recess ends, Jonathan Steele stands up to face the court once more. His legs feel like lead, but he forces himself to walk back to the witness stand. Prosecutor's eyes gleam with anticipation as Jonathan approaches. "Mr. Steele," he says, "you've heard the accusations. Now it's time for you to defend yourself." Jonathan's mind spins, and for a moment everything goes quiet. He remembers the man he used to be, confident, admired, unbreakable. But now, standing in front of the jury, he's a shadow of that person. He takes a deep breath and looks at the jury. "I didn't do this," he says, his voice shaking but filled with a raw, desperate truth. "I've made mistakes, but I am not guilty of what they're accusing me of." His words hang in the air, uncertain, as if the truth is both his weapon and his downfall. The trial has reached its climax. Jonathan Steele stands at the center of the courtroom, his heart pounding as the closing arguments begin. His entire life is on the line. Victor Carlyle, the prosecutor, has painted him as a man who would do anything to maintain his fame and fortune, even at the cost of others' lives. But Jonathan knows deep down that the truth is more complex than that. Rachel Green, his defense attorney, has fought tooth and nail for him, but now it's up to him to make the final stand. He looks at the jury, their eyes filled with doubt, uncertainty, and judgment. He can't afford to falter. Jonathan knows he must speak from the heart, not from the rehearsed lines or prepared statements. He takes a deep breath and addresses the jury, his voice steady, but filled with the weight of everything that has led to this moment. "I am not the man they say I am," he begins. I've made mistakes, but I have never been a criminal. The room is still as Victor Carlyle rises to make his rebuttal. His voice is sharp, his words calculated. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, he begins, you've heard the defendant's plea, but the evidence speaks for itself. His lies have caught up with him. Jonathan feels the weight of the words hit him like a physical blow. He tries to stay composed, but the pressure is suffocating. The room feels hotter now, the air thicker. He has been lying to you from the very start, Carlyle continues, and now he expects you to believe that he's innocent. Jonathan's fingers curl into fists at his sides, the frustration bubbling beneath the surface. He wants to yell, to scream at the injustice, but he knows better. The jury is watching. One wrong move, one wrong word, and everything will be lost. His fate rests in their hands. The tension in the courtroom is palpable as Rachel stands to deliver the final words of the defense. She walks to the center of the room, her heels clicking sharply against the floor, commanding attention. You've heard the accusations. You've seen the evidence. But the truth is not always as simple as it appears, Rachel begins, her voice steady and calm. Jonathan Steele may have made mistakes, but he is not a criminal. He is a man who was deceived, a man who has learned from his past and is willing to change. We are not here to judge his past. We are here to determine if he is guilty of the crime he is accused of. She pauses, letting the weight of her words settle in. The jury listens intently, the room silent except for her voice. Rachel looks directly at each juror one by one, hoping they understand the distinction she's making. The truth is complicated, she continues, but that does not mean it's not worth fighting for. The room is still as the judge calls for the jury to deliberate. Jonathan feels the weight of the silence, the unbearable anticipation. His fate is now in their hands. He stands, looking around at the faces of the people who have witnessed his fall from grace. His mind races. What will the jury decide? What will happen to his life, to his future? As he glances over at Lena Rivers, his estranged wife, sitting in the gallery, he sees her face, cold, distant, and impossible to read. He wants to say something to her, to ask for forgiveness, but the words are stuck in his throat. The storm outside has calmed, but inside, Jonathan's world is anything but peaceful. The judge calls for a short recess, and Jonathan walks out of the courtroom, his thoughts heavy with uncertainty. The jury has returned. Jonathan stands at the defense table, his body tense, his heart pounding in his chest. The judge looks over at the foreperson of the jury and nods. Has the jury reached a verdict? He asks. The foreperson rises, holding the verdict in their hands. Jonathan's breath catches in his throat as the courtroom falls into complete silence. He looks around at Rachel, at Lena, at the jury, each face reflecting a different story, a different outcome. The foreperson speaks, their words slow and deliberate. Will the jury find the defendant guilty of all charges? The words hit Jonathan like a freight train. His heart sinks, and everything around him fades into a blur. He is not the man he once was. The man who had everything is now lost, and nothing will ever be the same again. The gavel falls, echoing through the courtroom, signaling the end of Jonathan's trial. His conviction hangs in the air like an iron weight around his neck. Rachel Green, his defense attorney, stands beside him, her face pale, her shoulders tense. The moment they've both feared has come to pass. Jonathan's freedom, his future, is now uncertain. The court is adjourned for the day, but the uncertainty lingers like a dark cloud. Jonathan walks slowly out of the courtroom, his steps heavy, as if each movement brings him closer to a life he never imagined. The press is already outside, their cameras flashing as they surround him. Questions fly, accusations from the public echo in his ears, and he feels the walls closing in. Is it over? He whispers to Rachel, his voice filled with desperation. What now? She doesn't have the answers, but she knows one thing: his fight is far from over. Jonathan sits in the back of the car, staring blankly out of the window as the city passes by. The world outside seems so distant, so irrelevant. All that matters now is the emptiness that fills him. Rachel sits beside him, her hand resting on his, but it doesn't seem to reach him. "You don't have to face this alone," she says softly, her voice filled with concern. But Jonathan can't respond. He's lost in his thoughts, his mind racing with all that he's lost. His reputation is in tatters, his life a shattered mess of broken pieces. "What happens now?" he asks, barely above a whisper. Rachel doesn't have an answer. All she knows is that they have to fight the appeals, that there's still a chance. But Jonathan feels the weight of the world pressing down on him, and he wonders if any of this is worth it anymore. The media frenzy only intensifies as Jonathan's story spreads like wildfire. News outlets across the country report on the scandal, each headline worse than the last. The once adoring public now sees him as a villain, a cautionary tale of fame gone wrong. Jonathan tries to ignore the chaos, but the truth is undeniable. His world is collapsing. The phone rings constantly, but he refuses to answer. Friends, former colleagues, even family members, all distance themselves from him. He's become a pariah. Rachel is his only constant, but even she can't shield him from the harsh realities of the situation. "You have to keep fighting," she urges. "This isn't the end." Jonathan knows she's right, but he can't help but feel the weight of the world pressing down on him. He's not sure how much longer he can keep going. The appeal is underway. Rachel has worked tirelessly, gathering new evidence, preparing for the uphill battle to overturn Jonathan's conviction. But the pressure is overwhelming. Jonathan sits at the back of the courtroom, watching as the lawyers argue, each side presenting their case with the same intensity as before. The hope that once burned brightly in his chest is now a flickering ember, barely holding on. "It's not over yet," Rachel whispers to him as she returns to her seat. Jonathan nods, but the doubt in his eyes is clear. How much longer can he keep fighting? How much longer can he hold on to the belief that justice will prevail? The storm outside has passed, but a new storm is brewing inside Jonathan, one that threatens to tear him apart. The verdict of the appeal is finally announced. Jonathan stands, his heart racing in his chest. The courtroom is silent, the weight of the moment hanging heavy in the air. The judge looks directly at him, the words that follow hitting Jonathan like a thunderclap. The appeal is granted. The conviction is overturned. For a moment, time seems to freeze. Jonathan blinks, trying to process what he's hearing. The room erupts into whispers, and Rachel's face lights up with disbelief and joy. Jonathan, on the other hand, can only stand there, unable to move, unable to speak. The weight of the past years still hangs over him, but now, for the first time in what feels like forever, there's a sliver of hope. "We did it," Rachel says softly, her hand on his shoulder. Jonathan looks at her, his eyes filled with both relief and sorrow. The fight isn't over, but this victory is a glimmer of light in the darkness. Trial is finally over. The gavel has fallen, and Jonathan Steele stands outside the courthouse, his fate still uncertain. The air is crisp, the morning sun barely rising as reporters surround him, their questions bombarding him from all sides. Jonathan had thought he would feel relief, but now that it's over, he feels more lost than ever. He looks up at the sky, searching for something, anything, that could provide him with the answers he needs. "You won," a reporter shouts. "What's next for you, Jonathan?" He can't answer. He's not sure what's next. The battle for his freedom is over, but the war within him continues. The world has moved on, but Jonathan is still trapped in his past, a past that will follow him wherever he goes. "I don't know," he mutters, his voice barely audible over the noise. "I honestly don't know." Inside his apartment, Jonathan sits in front of a mirror, his fingers tracing the outline of his jaw. The silence is deafening. He's not the man he used to be, and he doesn't know how to be that man again. The weight of his past mistakes presses down on him, but there's also a nagging sense of guilt. He failed those who believed in him, and no amount of apologies will change that. He hears a knock at the door. It's Rachel. She's been with him through it all, but even her presence can't ease the emptiness he feels. "You did what you could," she says, sitting beside him. Jonathan shakes his head. It wasn't enough. She doesn't argue. Instead, she sits in silence, offering him the comfort of just being there. But Jonathan knows that the only person who can truly fix what's broken is himself. Following days are filled with phone calls and meetings. But Jonathan feels like he's drifting through life, moving without purpose. One afternoon, he receives a letter. It's from Lena. It's been years since they've spoken, and even though they've both moved on, there are still unresolved feelings. With trembling hands, Jonathan opens the letter. She doesn't blame him for what happened. Instead, she writes about their shared memories, the love they once had, and the possibility of healing. For the first time in what feels like forever, Jonathan feels something other than guilt. Hope. He realizes that while his career may be lost, his personal journey doesn't have to end. Maybe, just maybe, he can rebuild his life, one step at a time. Jonathan steps out onto the balcony of his apartment, looking out at the skyline. The city is alive, bustling with energy, yet he feels detached from it all. His life has been a roller coaster, and for the first time in years, he's unsure of where he's headed. The weight of his past mistakes will always be with him, but he knows that dwelling on them won't help him heal. He closes his eyes, taking in the sound of the city, and for a brief moment, he finds peace. What now? Rachel had asked him earlier. He doesn't know the answer, but standing here in the stillness of the moment, he realizes something important. It's not about the destination but the journey. Whatever comes next, Jonathan is ready to face it, no matter the cost. Months pass, and Jonathan slowly begins to rebuild his life. He starts speaking at events, sharing his story with others who have been through similar struggles. He still carries the weight of his past, but he's learning to live with it. He knows that redemption isn't something that happens overnight, but it's a journey he's willing to take. As he stands in front of a crowd, speaking about second chances, he feels something he hasn't felt in a long time: hope. The applause from the audience is a small victory, but it's enough. Jonathan smiles to himself, realizing that while the road ahead will be difficult, he's finally ready to walk it.